My name is Cole Harrison, the last of Boston's Harrison clan. To the world, I'm a burnout, a good-for-nothing living off the fumes of his family's old money. Only I know the truth. My old man was the greatest prospector of his generation, a master of the forgotten places, a true wayfinder. And I'm the only one he ever trained. 10 years ago, when I was 18, my family was wiped out. An enemy torched our brownstone, a blaze that raged for 3 days and 3 nights, leaving nothing but ash. I survived by playing dead, using a suspended animation technique my father taught me. It was the only reason I walked away. A decade. I haven't touched the family business since. I opened a junk shop for antiques in a dusty corner of the city, and I spend my days drinking cheap coffee and talking to my bird. It's not because I'm scared. It's because I'm waiting for a chance to tear a hole in the sky. Now, that chance has arrived. A woman with an offer I can't refuse and a map that points straight to the man who slaughtered my family is standing in my shop. Her name is Ava Thorne. She's the kind of woman who radiates a don't mess with me vibe from 100 yards. She claims she's with the government archaeology department. Bullshit. The scent of violence coming off her is stronger than the rats I've had to kill in the basement. Mr. Harrison, she said, $10 million. For a trip to a place in the Nevada desert they call the Serpent's Maw. I lit a cigarette, flicking the ash onto her polished leather boot. 10 million. I said, my life's worth more than that. Mr. Harrison, we're here in good faith. Ava Thorne sat on my dilapidated sofa, her brow furrowed so tightly you could crack a nut in it. 2 guys in black suits stood behind her, their temples bulging. Professionals. The shop smelled of stale coffee and dust, an odor that made her cough. I ignored her, focusing on preening the feathers of my pet mynah bird. Say something, Poe. The bird cocked its head and screeched in a gravelly voice. Got a job. Got a job. Morons here with cash. Ava's face darkened. A man next to her in gold-rimmed glasses stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, my director is speaking to you. This project is of the utmost importance. It concerns a major archaeological discovery. Archaeology? I finally looked up, my eyelids heavy. Your archaeological teams usually travel with trigger-happy bodyguards. I nodded toward the 2 suits. Anyone who didn't know better would think you were here to plan my funeral. The man in the glasses flinched. They're our security detail. The destination is hazardous. How hazardous? I laughed. More hazardous than the fake Civil War relics in this neighborhood. Ava finally lost her patience. She stood up. At 5'9", plus heels, she was an intimidating presence. She pulled a file from her briefcase and slapped it on my coffee table. Nevada. The Serpent's Maw. The ossuary. She spat the words out, her eyes locked on mine. My heart skipped a beat. The ossuary. That was a name from the old Harrison family legends. A secret whispered down through generations. The stories claimed it was built to contain the soul of a primordial evil, and that anyone who went inside never came out. Most importantly, it was where my father fell. My expression didn't change, but inside, a tidal wave was crashing. She'd done her homework. Never heard of it. I pushed the file back toward her. I run an antique shop, not a suicide squad. The door's on your right. 5 million, Ava said. Up front, I let out a low whistle. You hear that, Poe? 5 mil. The bird flapped its wings. Morons. Morons. Too much money, not enough brains. The man in glasses turned red, looking like he wanted to strangle my bird. A single glance from me froze him in place. Money's great, I said, leaning back in my chair and closing my eyes again, but I have to be alive to spend it. Find someone else. I knew she was testing me. If she'd found me, she knew I was more than some junk shop owner. By mentioning the ossuary, she was telling me she knew exactly who I was. Now, it was a waiting game. Who would break first? The shop was dead silent, save for the crack of Poe cracking open sunflower seeds. After a full 5 minutes, Ava spoke again, her voice laced with ice. Silas Kane is also looking for this place. My eyes snapped open. Silas Kane, the man who led the attack that destroyed my family. I chewed on that name every night before I fell asleep. I looked at Ava. Her eyes held no sympathy, only the cold calculus of a deal. This was a woman more predatory than I was. How do you know that? I asked. We have our sources. Ava sat back down, crossing her legs. According to our intelligence, Kane has assembled a team. They move out in 3 days. They have a map of the outer complex. And we, she paused, a smirk playing on her lips, have the map to the core. But we lack someone who can read it, and who can walk out alive. She pushed another document across the table. This time, it was a photo of a yellowed, leather-bound scroll. It was covered in cryptic symbols and topographical lines drawn in crimson ink. It was my family's one-of-a-kind Wayfinder's chart. That chart should have been turned to ash in the fire 10 years ago. My breath caught in my throat. Where did you get this? That doesn't concern you. Ava stood, looking down at me. Cole, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to inform you. 10 million. Help finding Silas Kane. And after it's done, we take 70% of whatever we find in the ossuary. You get 30. I want it all. I stared her down. You're not in a position to bargain, she sneered. Then you're not getting in? I shot back. We locked eyes, the air thick with tension. Finally, Ava broke. 50-50. That's my final offer. Deal. I stood up and stretched. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. She took a debit card from her purse and tossed it on the table. Down payment. Pin is 8, 6 times. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply on the worn wooden floor. At the door, she stopped and looked back at me. Cole, don't try anything funny. Down there, you follow our lead. If you're a dragon, you coil. If you're a tiger, you crouch. Otherwise, I have no problem arranging a family reunion for you in the afterlife. I grinned, showing all my teeth. Same goes for you, Director Thorne. You walk into my world. You play by my rules. The living prospect, the dead lead the way. Just don't come crying to me when it gets rough. Before dawn the next day, a black SUV pulled up to my shop. I slung a worn canvas duffel bag over my shoulder, grabbed Poe's cage, and got in, yawning. Leo was already in the back. My childhood friend, and the only person on this earth I trust. If I was walking into this mess, I was bringing backup. Cole, who is this broad? She's throwing cash around like it's nothing, Leo whispered, nudging me. He was staring at Ava in the passenger seat, practically drooling. She's the devil's favorite niece, here to collect our souls, I said flatly. Besides us, the man in glasses from yesterday, Dr. Evan Reed, the team's historian, was also in the car. 2 other young techs were in the back, looking at me like I was some kind of circus freak. We drove west for 2 days and 2 nights before the landscape flattened into the desolate expanse of the Nevada desert. The further we went, the rougher the terrain became. Cell service had died hours ago. The mood in the SUV was tense. No one spoke. Only Poe occasionally broke the silence with, "This ride sucks. I'm gonna puke." On the 3rd day at noon, we stopped in a basin surrounded by jagged, sun-scorched mountains. We're here. Ava got out, surveying the barren wasteland. According to the chart, the entrance is somewhere in this vicinity. Her tech team unloaded a bizarre array of equipment and got to work. Magnetometers, life sign detectors. They scanned for an hour and found absolutely nothing. Director, the magnetic fields here are off the charts. Our gear is getting severe interference. We can't get a lock, one of the techs reported, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava's expression soured. She looked at me, a question in her eyes. I stayed put, slowly pulling a smooth river stone from my pocket and turning it over in my hand. Mr. Harrison, do you have any insights? Dr. Reed asked politely, adjusting his glasses. My insight, I said, tossing the stone in the air, is that all your expensive toys aren't worth as much as this rock. The real entrance isn't found with a machine. It's found with your eyes. What's that supposed to mean? A young tech challenged. Our equipment is the best in the world. The best? I scoffed. Can it see through a man's lies? Can it detect the cold chill of a place that doesn't want to be found? I reached into my duffel bag and pulled out a bronze compass no bigger than my palm. It was ancient, its markings worn and faded. The needle wasn't magnetic. It was carved from a sliver of human bone. This was a Harrison family heirloom, the lodestone compass. It doesn't find true north. It finds gateways. I cradled the compass in my hand and muttered a few words under my breath. The bone needle spun wildly before snapping to a point, aimed directly at a sheer cliff face behind us. It was a barren wall of rock without a single plant. The entrance is there, I said, pointing. Everyone stared. But that's a solid rock wall, Dr. Reed stammered. How can there be an entrance? Seeing isn't always believing. I walked to the cliff face and ran my hand over its surface. The old texts speak of places like this. Places shielded by a geological distortion, a sort of natural mirage. Your machines can't penetrate it, so you find nothing. Following the compass's direction, I found a nondescript rock and tapped it 9 times in a specific sequence, a rhythm passed down in my family. A low rumbling sound started, and the entire cliff face began to vibrate. A dark, gaping hole slowly opened before us. A wave of cold, musty air washed over us, raising the hair on our arms. Ava's team was dumbfounded. The tech who had scoffed at me stood with his mouth open wide enough to catch flies. The look in Ava's eyes changed, too. Shock, doubt, and a flicker of greed. She stared at the compass in my hand, as if trying to see through it. Impressive, Mr. Harrison. She recovered first, waving her team forward. Everyone, prepared to enter. Hold on. I stopped her. We need to talk about my fee. What are you talking about? Her face went cold again. We agreed on 10 million. 10 million was the price to get you to the door. I held up the lodestone compass. Now the door is open. Going inside is extra. This compass doesn't point the way forward. It only finds the gate. What's inside, life or death? That's a different story. Are you trying to hustle me? Her voice was dangerously low. Hustle you? I stepped toward her until our faces were inches apart. I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the dusty desert air. Director Thorne, from this point on, I'm in charge. My Wort is Luft. Anyone who doesn't like it can stay out here and become coyote food. I stared into her eyes, speaking each word slowly and clearly. Or get dragged inside and become a midnight snack for whatever's waiting. Ava eventually caved. She had no choice. Her high-tech gadgets were just a pile of scrap metal out here. I was her only ticket in. Money isn't the issue, she said through gritted teeth. Just get us to the objective and get us out alive. Should have started with that. I nodded, satisfied, and was the first to step into the darkness. Leo followed close behind, with Ava's team bringing up the rear. The tunnel was pitch black. The beams of our flashlights seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, illuminating only a few feet ahead. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. What the hell is this place? It's creepy as hell, Leo muttered, rubbing his arms. We walked for about 15 minutes before we reached a stone door. 2 snarling demonic faces were carved into it, each holding a bronze ring in its mouth. I've got it. 2 of Ava's security guys moved to push it open with brute force. Don't touch it, I yelled. I walked to the door and pulled a candle from my bag, placing it on the ground in front of the door. I struck a match and lit the wick. The flame burned normally for a second, then turned a sickly, unnatural green. It flickered and bent, leaning toward the darkness of the tunnel, as if being drawn by an unseen breath. See that? I pointed to the green flame. An old prospector saying, man lights the candle, the dead blow it out. This candle is made from human tallow. It won't light for the living, only in places where the dead gather. The flame is green, which means there's something nasty in there. The flame is leaning inward, which means the big guy is already awake, and he's waiting for us. Hearing this, a few of the younger team members went pale. Dr. Reed adjusted his glasses, trying to remain composed. Mr. Harrison, let's not be alarmist. This could simply be an air current. You think? I sneered and picked up a small pebble, flicking it at the left demonic face on the door. The instant the pebble touched it, the door erupted, firing a volley of poison-tipped arrows from hidden slots. They whizzed past our heads and slammed into the stone wall behind us. The arrowheads immediately turned black and sizzled, emitting a thin white smoke. The 2 security guards who had been about to push the door collapsed onto the ground, their faces ashen. If I hadn't stopped them, they'd be human pincushions right now. Dr. Reed was speechless, staring at the smoking arrowheads with cold sweat dripping down his face. Ava's face was grim, but she was calmer than the others. She just looked at me, her expression even more complicated than before. That was just the appetizer, I said, blowing out the candle and putting it away. This is a life or death door. 1 ring opens the way, the other triggers a trap that will kill us all. Pull the right one, we live. Pull the wrong one, we die. So, which one is the right one? One of the techs asked, his voice trembling. How should I know? I shrugged. We have to ask them. I walked to the door and, using my finger, traced a strange symbol on the forehead of each demonic face. Then I bit the tip of my own finger and squeezed a single drop of blood onto the center of each symbol. It was an old wayfinder technique, using the blood of the living to ask the dead for directions. As my blood touched the stone, the eyes of the left demon began to weep two streams of what looked like blood. The right one remained unchanged. Left is life, right is death, I announced. Then I walked over to the right-hand demon and gripped the cold bronze ring. Wait, Dr. Reed shouted. Mr. Harrison, you just said the left one was the path of life. Why are you pulling the right one? Deception is the art of war, I said without looking back. Whoever built this tomb wasn't going to make it that easy. The path that looks like life is always the quickest way to die. It's about reversing the flow, finding life through death. Without another word, I pulled the ring with all my might. With a deep grinding sound, the heavy stone door slowly swung open. Beyond it, a flight of stairs led down into an abyss. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. The way they looked at me had changed from suspicion to something akin to reverence. Ava walked over and handed me a bottle of water. You seem to know everything. The more you know, the faster you die, I said, taking a sip. I only know one thing, how to keep us all alive. I looked at her, and that's only if you all listen to me. Ava was silent for a moment, then nodded. Fine. From now on, you're in command. She turned to her team. Did you hear that? All actions are on Mr. Harrison's authority. Yes, ma'am, they replied in unison, their voices filled with a newfound respect. I sneered internally. This was only the beginning. Ava, Silas Kane, whatever was in this ossuary, all their fates were in my hands now. I decide who lives and who dies. Just then, the lodestone compass in my pocket began to vibrate violently. The bone needle spun like a top, emitting a low hum. That was the highest level of warning. It meant something incredibly dangerous was approaching, fast. My face fell. Shit, everybody move now. The words had barely left my mouth when the entrance we had just come through slammed shut with a deafening boom, sealed by a massive slab of rock. Our only way out was gone. With our exit sealed, panic rippled through the group. What was that? The door just closed. We're trapped in here. The younger members started to lose their nerve. Everybody shut the hell up. I roared, my voice echoing down the corridor. Fear is contagious. Someone had to take control. My outburst worked. The chatter died down. All eyes were on me. What are you panicking for? A door closes, you open it again. I sounded calm, but my stomach was in knots. That sound wasn't a mechanism. It was deliberate, like someone had blocked it from the outside. Could it be? Silas Kane's men had already caught up? Mr. Harrison, what now? Ava was steady, clearly used to high-pressure situations. Now, we improvise. I glanced at her. There's only one way to go. Forward. Whether it leads to heaven or hell, we're about to find out. I shined my flashlight on the stairs ahead. They were made of slick, moss-covered flagstone and descended into infinite darkness. Stay close. Don't fall behind, I called out, leading the way down. Leo, armed with a shotgun, was right behind me, while Ava's two bodyguards covered our rear. The stairs were impossibly long. We walked for nearly half an hour before reaching the bottom, which opened into a massive natural cavern. In the center of the cavern sat a large, ornate carriage. It looked like an old-fashioned hearse, painted a deep sable black. Ornate, faded gold leaf depicted strange constellations, but the details were unsettling. The stars had eyes, and they seemed to watch us. In front of the carriage stood 4 silent figures, dressed as pallbearers from a bygone era. Their faces were pale, waxen masks, with vacant eyes and mouths fixed in expressions that were half smile, half grimace. Holy hell! What is this? Leo sucked in a breath. Why is there a hearse in a tomb? Is someone expecting a funeral? Not a funeral. I stared at the carriage, my face grim. A passenger. It's a sable carriage, I explained. It's meant to ferry a soul to the other side. And those aren't mannequins. They're its keepers. Don't be ridiculous, Mr. Harrison. There are no such things as ghosts. Dr. Reed said, adjusting his glasses. He was trying to sound rational, but his voice trembled. Want to test that theory? I pointed at the carriage. To cross this cavern, one of us has to ride in it. There's no other way. It's the toll. Ride. In that thing. When the text pointed, his face white with terror. You could shoot me. I'm not getting in there. You're not. Before I could respond, Ava spoke, her voice cold as steel. Anyone who doesn't want to ride can stay here. But I can't guarantee you'll live to see the sunrise. She drew her pistol and pressed the barrel against the tech's forehead. Now, do you still want to stay? The tech's knees buckled. He shook his head frantically. All right. That's better. Ava holstered her weapon. Mr. Harrison, your instructions? I gave her a look. The woman was ruthless. The carriage only takes one passenger at a time, and it must be a woman. My gaze fell on Ava. Her expression flickered. Why a woman? Because the entity this tomb was built for was male, I said slowly. The sable carriage is taking a bride to the other side. A man who gets in a scene as an interloper. The four keepers will tear him to pieces on the spot. All eyes turned to Ava and the only other woman on the team, a young technician who was already hiding behind one of the guards, shaking like a leaf. Ava took a deep breath. I'll do it. There was no hesitation in her voice. Director. Ava, no. It's too dangerous. Her team protested. Quiet. Ava snapped. That's an order. She walked up to me. What I need to know. Once you're inside, no matter what you see or hear, do not make a sound and do not open your eyes. Get out only when the carriage has come to a complete stop. I pulled a small, folded piece of parchment from my bag. Keep this on you. It'll buy you some time if things go south. Ava took the charm and nodded. She walked to the carriage, opened the door, and climbed inside. The door closed, hiding her from view. The moment she was inside, the four pallbearers actually moved. They turned with stiff, unnatural motions and lifted the carriage. Their movements were eerie, their limbs moving without bending, as if they were puppets. And their feet weren't touching the ground. No way. They're really moving. Leo yelped. Everyone was stunned. What was happening before them defied all logic. The four figures carried the carriage forward at a steady pace, soon disappearing into the cavern's darkness. What do we do now? Dr. Reed asked me, his voice shaking. We wait, I said, sitting cross-legged on the ground. We wait for her to come back. Will she come back? She will, I said, closing my eyes, as long as she plays by the rules. But I left out the most important part. The greatest danger wasn't for the person riding in the carriage. It was for those left behind. As if on cue, a cold wind swept through the cavern. A faint scratching, skittering sound rose from the darkness around us. It sounded like thousands of tiny things swarming toward us from all directions. I shined my flashlight into the darkness and saw them. Endless pairs of glowing green eyes. Are those wolves? A young man stammered, his grip on his rifle shaking. Worse, much worse. I stood and pulled a compact folding shovel from my pack. They're scarabs, tomb scarabs, and they haven't eaten in a few hundred years. In the beams of our flashlights, a tide of black, chitinous beetles poured from cracks in the rock and holes in the ground. Each one was the size of a fist, with a pair of razor-sharp mandibles that clicked and scraped, a sound that made your skin crawl. Their glowing green eyes formed a shimmering, horrifying carpet in the dark. Fire! Open fire! Dr. Reed screamed in terror. Bang! 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 Ava's two bodyguards were the first to react, their assault rifles barking. Bullets ricocheted off the scarab shells, spattering green ichor. But there were too many of them. It was like trying to stop the tide with a bucket. For everyone they killed, a dozen more swarmed over its corpse, devouring it before continuing their relentless advance. The gunfire only seemed to enrage them. Don't use guns, you idiots! I roared. Their carapaces are too thick for small-caliber rounds. The smell of blood is just drawing more of them. But it was too late. A scarab broke through the line of fire and launched itself at the nearest young technician. Arr! He screamed as the beetle's mandibles punched through the artery in his thigh. A fountain of blood erupted. Attracted by the scent, hundreds more scarabs descended upon him in a black, writhing wave. In a blink, he was completely submerged. We could hear his blood-curdling screams and the sickening crunch of bones being snapped and gnawed. A few seconds later, the sound stopped. When the swarm moved on, all that was left was a bloody skeleton, draped in the tattered remains of his clothes. The other female tech on the team saw it and completely broke down, collapsing to the ground in a screaming heap. The rest of the men were frozen in place, their faces drained of all color. You all want to die. I slammed my shovel into a scarab that was lunging for Leo. If you want to live, get in a circle. Use your fire starters. They're afraid of fire. My shout snapped them out of their stupor. They scrambled for their packs, pulling out flares and cans of accelerant. Soon, a wall of flames encircled us. The scarabs surged forward but were driven back by the intense heat, screeching as they retreated. For the moment, we were safe. But everyone knew it was only temporary. Our fuel wouldn't last forever. When it ran out, we would be the main course. Mr. Harrison, what do we do now? Dr. Reed asked, his voice cracking with sobs. An academic like him had never witnessed such a brutal, bloody scene. I ignored him, my eyes fixed on the swarm beyond the fire. Something was wrong. Scarabs are vicious, but they usually stick to their nests. They wouldn't launch an all-out assault like this without a reason, unless something was controlling them. I thought of the disappearing carriage, the sable carriage, the keepers. Was this another test? Ava's ride was the bride's trial. Were we, the ones left behind, undergoing the trial of the wedding party? I looked into the darkness where Ava had vanished. It was utterly silent. What was happening to her? Time ticked by. The circle of fire shrank as our fuel dwindled. Despair was etched on every face. Cole, are we really going to bite it here? Leo asked, his back pressed against mine. His voice was shaky. I haven't even gotten married yet. Shut your trap. I pulled 3 incense sticks from my pack and planted them in the ground. Then, I laid out 3 yellow parchment talismans. Leo, cover me. I sat cross-legged and arranged the talismans in a line. Biting my finger, I drew the symbol for command on each one with my blood. Then, my hands formed a complex seal, and I began chanting a series of ancient, guttural words. This was a wayfinder's last resort, a summoning, not of gods, but of something far older. I wasn't calling for help. I was calling a marker. I was calling on the twin shades my family was bound to serve. As I chanted, the 3 incense sticks lit themselves, no flame required. The smoke didn't rise. It coiled along the ground and seeped into the talismans. The papers began to tremble violently, then lifted into the air on their own. By blood and bond, by shadow and bone, answer the call of the Harrison line. I summon thee. Now, with a final shout, I snapped my eyes open. A strange light flared within them. The 3 talismans burst into ash. From the cinders, 2 figures rose, one of pure darkness, the other of pale, ethereal light. Their features were indistinct, but the sheer otherworldly pressure they exuded sent waves of panic through the scarab swarm. Little air, what troubles you to disturb our slumber? A dry, rasping voice echoed directly in my mind. My humble greetings, guardians, I thought back. My path is blocked by vermin. I ask you to clear the way. Mere beetles dare to stand in the path of a wayfinder. A second, sharper voice chimed in. Fine. For the sake of the old pact, we will assist you this once. The 2 figures dissolved into streaks of black and white light and shot into the swarm. A cacophony of horrific screeches erupted. Any scarab touched by the light instantly melted into a puddle of black goo. In a matter of seconds, the seemingly endless tide of beetles was completely annihilated. The cavern was silent again. The figures reappeared before me, their forms fading. Be wary, little air. This is a place of great power. Leave before it consumes you. The rasping voice left one final warning in my mind before they vanished completely. I let out a long breath and felt the strength drain from my body. A summoning like that takes a massive toll. My face was pale, and I swayed, nearly collapsing before Leo caught me. Cole, you okay? I wave him off. I'll live. Dr. Reed and the others were staring at me as if I were a god. Everything they had just witnessed had shattered their understanding of reality. Just then, a faint creaking sound came from the darkness. We all tensed and turned. It was the sable carriage. It had returned. The 4 pallbearers brought it to a stop before us. The door opened, and Ava stepped out. Her face was even paler than mine, completely devoid of color. Her eyes were wide with a terror that seemed to have been permanently etched there, as if she had just witnessed the face of hell itself. As soon as she was clear, the carriage and its 4 keepers burst into silent, black flames and vanished into ash. In their place, a narrow path paved with bones appeared, leading deeper into the cavern. What? What did you see? I asked, leaning against the wall for support. Ava's lips trembled, but no words came out. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my flesh. It took her a long moment before she could finally choke out 3 words. I saw. Your father. 6, what did you say? I grabbed Ava's shoulders, my control slipping. Say that again. The grip seemed to snap her out of it. The raw terror in her eyes faded slightly, replaced by a haunting memory. In the carriage, I saw a vision, she said, her breathing ragged. I saw your father, Marcus Harrison. He's not dead. Not dead. My mind went blank. That was impossible. I saw the beam crush him. I saw him disappear into the fire. He was on some kind of altar, dressed in ornate golden robes, like a king. People were kneeling before him. It was some kind of ritual. Ava struggled to recall the details. He seemed to be waiting for someone. He kept saying, soon, it will be soon. When she arrives, we can open the threshold and return to the Empyrean. The threshold? The Empyrean? I frowned. I'd only ever seen those words in a single, fragmented journal passed down through my family. It claimed the Wayfinders weren't entirely human, but descendants of an ancient race banished to our world, tasked with guarding a forbidden place called the Threshold. And the ossuary was the only known gate. Could those myths be true? Was my father not just a prospector, but a guardian? What else did he say? I pressed. He also said, Ava glanced at me, her eyes darting away. He said he needed the blood of the Oracle to awaken the great Serpent and open the gate. The Oracle? A terrible realization dawned on me. I stared at Ava. You're the Oracle, aren't you? Ava didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. No wonder. No wonder she had to come to this godforsaken place. No wonder an archaeologist traveled with a team of killers. Her goal was never some historical artifact. Who are you people, really? My voice turned to ice. Why did you come to me? My purpose is the same as yours, Ava said, looking me straight in the eye. To find the truth. She pulled a locket from around her neck and opened it. Inside was a tiny black and white photo of a young woman with a sweet smile. Her eyes, her features, they were a near-perfect match for the faded picture of my mother I kept in my wallet. This was my aunt, Catherine Thorne, Ava said. She was also your mother's twin sister. I was completely stunned. My mother had a twin sister? How could I have never known? Years ago, my aunt and your mother were both candidates to be the next Oracle. In the end, your mother was chosen and married your father. And my aunt vanished from the face of the earth. Ava's eyes welled with tears. My family searched for her for 20 years, but we never found a trace. It was only recently that we found a lead, connecting her disappearance to your father and to this ossuary. I believe your father used her as a sacrifice, an offering to whatever entity is trapped in here. My mind was a chaotic storm. My father murdered Ava's aunt. My father was still alive, preparing some insane ritual to become a god. It was all too much to believe. No, I yelled. My father wasn't that kind of man. We'll find out soon enough, won't we? Ava pointed to the path of bones. That path must lead to the main chamber. Your father. He should be in there. I looked at the grim, bony path, then back at Ava. I didn't know how much of her story was true. She was a master manipulator. But I knew I had no other choice. Whatever the truth was, I had to see it for myself. I had to find my father and ask him what really happened all those years ago. And I had to find Silas Kane. That was a debt that could only be paid in blood. Let's go. I suppressed all the questions raging in my mind, picked up my shovel, and was the first to step onto the bone path. I'm going to see for myself how my dead father plans on becoming a god. The path wasn't long, but the crunch of bone under our boots was unnerving. At its end was a massive bronze door, slightly ajar. A thick, coppery smell of blood wafted from the opening. Leo and I exchanged a look and pushed the door open together. The scene beyond made every one of us gasp. We were in a cavern 100 times larger than the last. In its center was a giant, circular altar, its surface covered in bizarre symbols drawn in what looked like fresh blood. Surrounding the altar were 9 massive stone pillars. Chained to each pillar was a desiccated corpse. Their clothes were modern, and in the very center of the altar, sitting on a black stone sarcophagus, was a man. His back was to us. He wore a long, yellow robe, disturbingly similar to an emperor's burial shroud. He must have heard us. He slowly turned his head. When I saw his face, all the blood in my body turned to ice. I knew that face. It was older, more haggard, but the eyes, the jawline. I'd know it anywhere. Dad, I whispered, the name I hadn't spoken in 10 years catching in my throat. The man on the altar looked at me and smiled. It was a strange, twisted, and utterly alien expression. My dear boy, you finally come. His voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper on stone. Your father's been waiting for a very long time. You're really my father. I couldn't believe my eyes. The man looked exactly like my dad, but the feeling he gave off was completely wrong. My father was a pillar of strength, his eyes always sharp and determined. This man's eyes were cloudy, filled with a crazed, malevolent energy. Of course I'm your damn father. Who else would I be? The milkman. The man on the altar stood up with a string of curses. He stretched, and his bones popped and cracked loudly. God, sleeping in this damn box gives me a backache. Son, come on, give your old man a hand. I didn't move. Leo stood beside me, his shotgun raised and ready. Ava and her team already had their weapons trained on the altar. What's the matter? Haven't seen your old man in 10 years, and you don't recognize me? Marcus clicked his tongue in disapproval. Or are you just like your mother, got a taste of freedom, and now you think you can defy me? He started to walk slowly down from the altar. You're not my father, I said, my eyes locked on him. My father is dead. Who are you? Why are you wearing his face? I am your father, you fool, Marcus said, walking right up to me. He reached out to pat my cheek. I flinched back instinctively. His hand stopped midair. The smile vanished from his face. Getting bold, are we? His tone turned chillingly cold. I brought you into this world. I raised you, and now I can't even touch you. You don't have the warmth of a living man, I said coldly. You're a walking corpse. Something is controlling you. The lodestone compass in my pocket had been burning hot ever since we entered this room. The needle was spinning frantically, pointing right at Marcus, indicating an overwhelming aura of death and corruption. Hit. Marcus began to laugh, a high-pitched, grating sound. Sharp as a tack, just like I taught you. You're not wrong. His face started to contort, the skin rippling as if something were moving beneath it. That's right. Your father is long dead. The thing standing before you is and is not your father. What are you? Ava demanded. I am a god, Marcus declared, spreading his arms wide in a look of ecstasy. I'm the keeper of the threshold. He jabbed a finger at Ava. And you, the oracle, are the key to opening the gate. With your blood, I can return to the Empyrean and live forever. You're full of crap. Leo couldn't hold back anymore. You're just some freakish zombie that learned how to talk. A god? My ass. Insolent worm. Marcus's face twisted in fury. He moved, a blur of motion too fast to track. One moment he was there, the next, Leo's 200-pound frame was sent flying through the air. He hit the stone wall with a sickening thud, coughed up a spray of blood, and crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Leo, I screamed, my vision turning red. You're next, Marcus hissed, stalking toward me. My dear boy, hand over the Wayfinder's legacy, and I'll make your death quick. Go to hell, I roared, charging him with my shovel. I'm sending you back where you belong. Clang, the shovel struck his arm with all my might, but it felt like hitting a steel girder. The impact vibrated up my arms, and my hands went numb. His arm didn't even have a scratch. Is that all you've got? Tickles. He kicked me squarely in the stomach. I flew backward and crashed into Leo's unconscious body. My insides felt like they'd been rearranged, and I spat out a mouthful of blood. He was too strong. His power and speed were inhuman. Fire, Ava shouted, making a decisive call. Rat-T-T-T-T-T-T-T. A dozen rifles opened up at once, a storm of bullets engulfing Marcus. But something impossible happened. The bullets seemed to vanish as they hit him, absorbed without a sound. When the smoke cleared, he was standing there, completely unharmed, without a single hole in his clothes. He brushed some dust off his shoulder and grinned, revealing a set of unnaturally white teeth. Guns don't work on me. A wave of despair washed over us. If guns couldn't stop him, what could? Now my turn. Marcus vanished again. Screams erupted around us as he moved through Ava's team, snapping their necks with casual, brutal efficiency. He killed them like someone stepping on ants. In a matter of seconds, only Ava and Dr. Reed were left. Reed had collapsed in a heap, a dark stain spreading across his pants. Ava, though terrified, still held her pistol firmly aimed at Marcus. "Put the gun down, little oracle," Marcus said, walking toward her. "Come with me peacefully, and I promise I won't kill you." His hand reached for her face. "Get away from her." I struggled to my feet and stood between them. I wiped the blood from my mouth. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me first." "How touching," Marcus applauded mockingly. "A hero to the rescue. A shame you don't have the strength to back it up." He swung his hand in a vicious backhand slap. I knew I couldn't dodge it. This was it. My head was about to pop like a watermelon. I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But the impact never came. I opened my eyes. A figure stood in front of me. He was dressed in a simple, dark jacket, and though he was slender, his back was as solid as a mountain. He had caught Marcus's wrist with one hand, effortlessly stopping the blow. Marcus's monstrous face showed a flicker of shock and fear for the first time. You're supposed to be dead." The figure slowly turned his head. His face was unfamiliar, yet there was something about him I recognized. He looked at me and smirked. "Kid, nobody messes with Silas Kane's business and gets away with it." At the cavern entrance, dozens of heavily armed men swarmed in. At their head was Silas Kane himself. Silas Kane had arrived, his crew flooding the cavern like sharks smelling blood. Silas Kane, the entity wearing my father's face, roared, his voice dripping with venom. "You treacherous bastard. You're still alive. You didn't die, so how could I?" Kane said smoothly, dusting off his coat. The man in the dark jacket beside him released Marcus's wrist. Marcus stumbled back, his eyes warily fixed on the stranger. "Ah, forgive my manners," Kane said with a theatrical smile, gesturing to the man. "This is Mr. Deacon, a specialist I've recently retained. His particular talents are perfect for dealing with unruly spirits." Parlor tricks. Marcus scoffed, though he made no move to attack. Kane ignored him, his gaze settling on me. "Cole Harrison, my dear nephew, it's been 10 years. You've grown." His eyes were like a viper's, cold and unsettling. "You were lucky to survive that fire. Your luck runs out today." "Silas Kane, perfect timing," I said, forcing myself to stand straight and wiping more blood from my lip. "You and I have a score to settle." "Settle?" Kane laughed, as if it were the funniest joke he'd ever heard. He pointed a thumb at Marcus. "You still think that thing is your father? Why don't you ask him who poisoned him 10 years ago? Who performed the ritual that turned him into this puppet?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I shot a look at Marcus, who for a split second looked flustered. "That's right, it was me," Kane proclaimed proudly. "Your father discovered the secret of the threshold and wanted to keep it all for himself. I was simply taking back what was rightfully mine. I used an ancient rite to bind his soul to his corpse, turning him into my guardian. For 10 years, he has stood watch over this altar, waiting for the oracle to arrive. Everything was going according to plan, until the old bastards proved stronger than I expected. He somehow broke my control and thought he could turn the tables on me. Pathetic. So that was the truth. My father had been murdered by Silas Kane, his body desecrated and turned into a puppet. A wave of pure rage surged through me, hot as lava. My vision tunneled. "Silas Kane." I bit out each word, my voice a low growl. "I will kill you." "You and what army?" Kane scoffed. "Mr. Deacon, if you would. Cripple him, but leave him breathing. I still need his blood to anoint the 9 pillars." The man named Deacon nodded and started toward me. With each step, an almost physical pressure radiated from him. It felt like a mountain was bearing down on me, making it hard to breathe. This was no ordinary thug. He was a master, far more dangerous than the possessed corpse of my father. "Stop!" Ava raised her gun, placing herself in front of me. "Kane, we both want what's in the threshold. There's no need for this." "Thorne's little girl, this doesn't concern you," Kane said without even looking at her. "Out of respect for your aunt, I won't kill you today." But don't interfere. Once I open the threshold and claim its power, your entire family will bow to me. In your dreams, Ava spat. We'll see about that. Cain waved a dismissive hand. Deacon lunged, his hand shaped like a claw, aiming for the top of my head. I could see faint sparks of static electricity dancing around his fingertips. I was too slow, too weak to react. This is it. I'm really going to die this time. Just as his hand was about to connect, everything went wrong. The 9 stone pillars surrounding the altar began to shake violently. The eyes of the 9 desiccated corpses chained to them snapped open, glowing with a malevolent red light. Roar! With an unholy shriek, the 9 corpses broke their chains and leaped from the pillars. They weren't targeting us. They were charging straight for Silas Cain and his men. What's happening? Cain's face paled. Why are the blood husks awake? I awoke them. On the altar, Marcus let out a chilling laugh. Silas, you fool. Did you really think you had me under your thumb? For 10 years, I pretended to be your slave, but I was secretly siphoning the energy from these pillars, turning your guardians into my own servants. Today you will die. Marcus threw his head back and howled. The robes he wore billowed around him as an aura of power, 10 times stronger than before, exploded from his body. The 9 blood husks, acting on his command, crashed into Cain's men. Chaos erupted. Cain's crew, though well-armed, were no match for the husks, who were impervious to bullets and possessed superhuman strength. Even when riddled with holes, they got back up. Cain's forces were being torn apart. Deacon was now occupied, fending off 2 of the husks. His power was formidable. He could conjure bolts of lightning in his palms that blew chunks of flesh off the monsters. But the husks were relentless, forcing him onto the defensive. The hunter had become the hunted. Silas Cain thought he was the master puppeteer, but the real monster was the thing wearing my father's skin. This is our chance. I grabbed Ava and the terrified Dr. Reed, then hauled Leo's unconscious body over my shoulder. Let's go, while they're busy killing each other. We scrambled for cover behind one of the massive pillars. With the cavern in turmoil, it was the perfect opportunity to escape. If we could just make it out of this chamber, we might have a chance. But we had only taken a few steps when a low, menacing voice echoed behind us. Leaving so soon? It was Marcus. He hadn't joined the fight against Cain. He had been watching us the whole time. I haven't gotten the Oracle's blood yet. None of you are going anywhere. 9 Marcus materialized before us like a phantom, a cruel smile on his face. Well, I thought you were leaving. I pushed Ava behind me, my knuckles white on the handle of my shovel. What the hell do you want? Simple. Marcus pointed at Ava. Leave her. The 3 of you can go. Oh, he added, and you'll leave the Wayfinder's chart and the lodestone compass. My blood ran cold. Of course, his goal was the same as Cain's, the Harrison family legacy and the key to opening the threshold. Ava was that key. Never. Before I could speak, Ava stepped forward, her pistol aimed squarely at Marcus. I'll die before I let you succeed. Spirited, Marcus applauded slowly. A pity that in my presence, you don't even have the right to die. He advanced on us, the pressure of his aura becoming suffocating. Across the cavern, Silas Cain and Deacon were losing ground against the 9 blood husks. Cain's crew was nearly wiped out. Harrison, Cain yelled over the chaos, parrying a blow from a husk. A truce. We can settle our differences later. Let's work together. Open the threshold. We'll split whatever is inside. What do you say? Split it. Marcus cackled. Silas, are you an idiot? After I'm done with them, I'll deal with you. Your flesh and blood will be a fine feast for my pets. Cain's face turned ashen. He knew he was done for. What do I do? My mind raced. A monster in front of me, a killer behind me. A straight fight was suicide. I had to find a way to break this deadlock. My eyes scanned the cavern. The altar, the pillars, the blood husks. Wait, the pillars. My father's journal mentioned it. The Wayfinders guarded the threshold, not with strength alone, but with an ancient construct of geomantic energy, a great ward. The 9 pillars convergence. These 9 pillars were its focal points. The ward could suppress what was inside the threshold, but could also draw upon the raw power of the earth itself. That's how Marcus had created his husks, by siphoning that power. Could I use the ward against him? The activation ritual was lost to time. My father's journal only had cryptic fragments. Boy, what are you plotting over there? Marcus was now only a few feet away. He reached for Ava. Now, I yelled, throwing the lodestone compass at his face with all my strength. At the same time, I pulled out my last 3 talismans, bit my tongue hard, and spat a spray of blood onto them. By blood and bond, by shadow and bone. Ancestors of the Wayfinder line, grant me your strength. Now, it was the most forbidden art in the Harrison logs. A self-destructive ritual to channel the spirit of the first Wayfinder, using my own life force as a conduit. It would leave me crippled for months. But I was out of options. Boom! An immense power slammed down into me, flooding every cell in my body. My vision shifted. I could see the world differently. Currents of energy, the flow of power through the rock, the ley lines of the earth. And the operational matrix of the 9 pillars convergence lit up in my mind, as clear as a blueprint. The lodestone compass, a powerful ward against spirits, struck Marcus, and he recoiled. Black smoke hissed from the point of impact. "You little bastard!" he roared, throwing a punch that could shatter stone. But I was no longer the man I was a moment ago. I sidestepped the blow, my feet moving in a strange, instinctive pattern, weaving around him. With each step, I landed on a key nexus of power. I began to chant, the ancient words flowing from my lips as if I had known them my entire life. 9 pillars, heed my call. Earth and fire, wind and water, obey. Awaken. As the last word left my mouth, the entire cavern began to shake violently. The 9 pillars blazed with a brilliant light. 9 dragons, formed of pure energy, erupted from the stone and coiled in the air above, their roars shaking the very foundations of the world. The once unstoppable blood husks trembled before this power, then disintegrated into dust. No, impossible. Marcus stared in horror at the dragons of light. How do you know the activation right? Because I am a last Wayfinder. I pointed at him, golden light pouring from my eyes. And you are a parasite squatting in my father's body. Today, I'm evicting you for good. My hands formed a final seal, and I thrust them toward the sky. 9 dragons, converge. The 9 light dragons roared as one and descended, wrapping around Marcus like golden chains, binding him to the center of the altar. Aarg, he shrieked in agony as the light seared his body, black smoke pouring off him. The face of my father melted away like wax, revealing a monstrous, fang-toothed demon beneath. "I'll take you all with me," the demon screamed, its body beginning to swell, preparing to self-destruct. Not today. I pulled out my last human tallow candle and lit it. With the last of my strength, I hurled it at the altar. Wayfinder's light, guide the lost home. This was the highest funerary rite of my family, to use one's own light to banish the ultimate darkness. The candle landed on the demon, and the flame exploded, engulfing it in a pillar of golden fire. And in that fire, for a fleeting second, I saw my father's true face. He looked at me, and he smiled a look of pride and peace. Then, along with the demon's dying screams, he vanished into ash. With the demon destroyed, the 9 dragons of light faded, and the cavern fell silent. I could no longer stand. The world went black, and I collapsed. The backlash from the ritual hit me like a freight train. My body felt hollowed out, empty. I couldn't even lift a finger. Cole, Ava, and Dr. Reed rushed to my side. Leo was slowly coming to, looking around in a daze. "What? I fell asleep? What happened?" "Cole, you look like hell." "Just a little tired," I managed to rasp. Across the chamber, Silas Kane and Deacon had recovered. Most of their men were dead. Only the 2 of them remained. Kane stared at the smoldering ashes on the altar, then at my weakened state. A familiar, greedy light sparked in his eyes. "Well, kid, I'll give you this, you've got guts," Kane said, walking over with a smirk. "But you're running on empty now, aren't you? Kill him, and all his little family heirlooms are mine for the taking." "You'll have to go through me, Kane," Ava said, stepping in front of me and raising her pistol. "You?" Kane scoffed. "Mr. Deacon, please finish this." Deacon moved toward us, his face an impassive mask. We were finished. I was incapacitated, Leo was badly injured, Ava was just one woman, and Reed was useless. I closed my eyes, a bitter taste in my mouth. To take down the main boss, only to be killed by his lackey. What a pathetic end. Just as Deacon's hand was about to close around my throat, the cavern began to shake again, far more violently than before. Crack! The ground beneath us split open. The center of the altar, where the demon had died, collapsed inward, revealing a swirling, bottomless vortex of pure blackness. An incredible suction force erupted from it. The threshold. It's open. Cain stared at the vortex, his body trembling with excitement. Ha ha! It's open. I'm going to be a god. He completely forgot about us, scrambling madly toward the vortex. Sir, no. It's too dangerous. Deacon yelled, trying to grab him, but Cain threw him off. Anyone who stands in my way dies. Like a man possessed, Silas Cain leaped into the black whirlwind. His body was instantly consumed by the darkness. Oomph. Deacon sighed, shaking his head. He glanced at the vortex, then at us. Finally, he simply turned and walked away, disappearing from the cavern without a backward glance. He probably figured we were dead anyway. He was right. The vortex's pull was growing stronger, the ground crumbling around us. Everything was being dragged into it. We couldn't keep our footing, sliding inexorably toward the abyss. Grab on, I yelled, using my last ounce of will. Leo and Ava grabbed one of my arms each. Dr. Reed clung to Leo's leg, screaming his head off. It was useless. We were being pulled into the unknown. If we're going down, we go down together. Leo shouted, a wild grin on his face. Worth it to go out with you, brother. Ava didn't speak. She just held my hand tighter, her palms slick with cold sweat. I stared into the vortex, and a strange calm washed over me. The score with Cain was settled. My father was at peace. My family's mystery was solved. That didn't seem so bad. My only regret was not seeing what was on the other side of the threshold. Just as we were about to be pulled in, something on my chest grew warm. It was the pendant my mother had given me, a small carving made of some unknown animal bone. I'd worn it my entire life. It began to glow, projecting a small shield of light around the four of us. The pull of the vortex vanished, and then I saw it. I saw what was on the other side. It wasn't some divine realm. It was endless space. Countless shattered continents drifted through a cosmic sea. Gigantic, indescribable creatures swam between the stars. The ruins of ancient, impossible cities stood silent on the floating islands. This was a world, a universe, more vast and more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. Our world, compared to this, was a single grain of sand on an infinite beach. The vortex was a wormhole connecting the two. I saw Silas Cain's body enter that universe. The moment it crossed over, it was shredded into atoms by an unseen force. He didn't even have time to scream. The threshold wasn't a gate to heaven. It was a gate to a higher and infinitely more hostile dimension. The Wayfinders weren't guarding a treasure. They were guarding a barrier. Our world's quarantine. If that barrier failed, our world would be devoured. I finally understood. My father, my ancestors, our entire family line. We were the guardians of this world. As this realization hit me, a single, colossal eye opened on the other side of the vortex. It was larger than the moon, and in its pupil, I could see the birth and death of stars. It simply looked at us. That gaze seemed to cross eons, to pierce through time itself. I felt my very soul being drawn out of my body into that terrible cosmic stare. Under the gaze of that colossal eye, we were less than insects. My consciousness began to fray, threatening to dissolve into the void. At that critical moment, the bone pendant on my neck flared with brilliant light. A warm, grounding energy pulled my mind back from the brink. At the same time, under the pendant's light, the black vortex began to shrink, closing with visible speed. No! A roar of pure fury echoed from the other side. The language was alien, but I understood the meaning perfectly. Rage, frustration, and a hint of fear. It was afraid of my mother's pendant. The vortex sealed completely and vanished. The ground on the altar became solid again. The cavern was plunged into an eerie silence, as if the last few minutes had been a hallucination. The four of us collapsed, gasping for air, our bodies trembling uncontrollably from the aftermath. What was that? Dr. Reed's teeth chattered. Did we just see aliens? Something more complicated than that, I said, looking at the now dull pendant in my hand. A wild theory began to form in my mind. My mother, she might not have been from this world. She came from the other side of the threshold. She came here, married my father, and had me. This pendant wasn't just a keepsake. It was a key or a shield. We need to get out of here. Now. Ava's voice broke my train of thought. She was checking her gear, her face grim. This whole place could come down on our heads any minute. We helped each other up. Leo was in the worst shape with several broken ribs. I hoisted him onto my back. We retraced our steps, passing the gruesome remains of Kane's crew. When we reached the cavern with the sable carriage, we found that the rockfall blocking the entrance had vanished. A beam of light shone in from outside. Sunlight. We were finally getting out of this hellhole. The moment we stepped outside, the warm sun hit us so bright it was blinding. We greedily breathed in the fresh desert air. It felt so good to be alive. In the valley, only our SUV remained. Kane's vehicles were gone, probably taken by Deacon. We loaded the wounded into the truck, and Ava drove. No one spoke on the way back. Each of us was processing the experience, trying to make sense of a world that was suddenly infinitely larger and more terrifying. The reality we knew was just the tutorial level. Outside the city walls, there were bigger maps and bigger monsters. We drove back to civilization and found a discreet clinic to treat Leo's injuries. I slept for 3 days straight. When I woke up, Ava was sitting by my bed. "You're awake," she said, handing me a glass of water. "Yeah, my throat was raw. Where's Reed?" The experience was too much for him. He had a complete breakdown. I've arranged for him to be sent home for psychiatric care. She paused. This operation was my mistake. I never imagined it would be this complicated. I'll take full responsibility for the team members we lost. Her voice was heavy with guilt and exhaustion. "It's not your fault," I said, looking at her. "We were all just pawns in a much bigger game." Thinking back, her family, Silas Kane, even my own father, we were all being manipulated by the terrifying presence on the other side of the threshold. "What are your plans now?" Ava asked. "Going home," I said, looking out the window. "Back to Boston. Back to my junk shop, my coffee, and my bird." After everything, a quiet life seemed like the ultimate prize. Immortality, power. It was all garbage. Just being alive was enough. "And will you keep looking?" Ava's eyes went to the pendant on my neck. "For the truth about your mother?" About the threshold, I was silent. Of course I wanted to. I needed to know who my mother was and why she came here. I needed to know what the threshold was and what that giant I belonged to. But I also knew that with my current power, chasing those secrets was a suicide mission. "Maybe later," I finally said, shaking my head. "I'm tired. I just want to rest." Ava nodded, respecting my decision. "That's fair." She stood up. "This is for you." She placed a bank card on the nightstand. "And I owe you one. If you ever need anything, call me." She turned and left. I knew that our paths were diverging. She would continue her family's quest in her own way, and I would return to my ordinary life, at least for a while, because I knew this wasn't over. The threshold was closed for now, but one day it would open again. And as the new wayfinder, the guardian of this world, my watch had only just begun. A month later, Harrison's Curios, Boston. I was back to my old routine, bad coffee, a good book, and talking smack with my bird. Leo's ribs had healed, and he now spent his days lounging in my shop, regaling anyone who would listen with his heroic exploits in Nevada, turning the scarab attack into a one-on-one battle with Godzilla. The old lady who sold fake jade jewelry next door was his biggest fan. My minor bird, Poe, had a new favorite phrase. Got a job, go rob a tomb, punch a zombie. He screeched it at every customer, which was terrible for business. Life seemed to have returned to normal. The events in the desert felt like a distant, surreal nightmare. But every night, I would dream of that cold, cosmic eye. It was a splinter in my mind that would never go away. I began to study my father's journals and the old family texts with a new obsession. Passages that were once incomprehensible now made a terrifying amount of sense. I discovered that the Harrison family's prospecting was never about treasure. It was about finding and sealing fractures in reality, smaller versions of the threshold scattered across the globe. Many ancient tombs and powerful sites were built on top of these fractures, using their inherent energy to keep them sealed. We were the maintenance crew. My father didn't go to the ossuary for fame or fortune. He went because he sensed the main seal was weakening. He was trying to reinforce it. He just never counted on Silas Kane's treachery. The more I read, the more I understood how fragile our world was. It was an egg, protected by a thin shell. And we, the guardians, were the ones tasked with patching the cracks. If the shell ever broke, the darkness outside would flood in and consume everything. It was a beautiful autumn afternoon. I was dozing in my rocking chair, enjoying a rare sliver of sun. The bell on the shop door jingled. "Welcome," Leo grunted from his spot on the couch. "Boss is sleeping. Look around, don't touch anything. You break it, you buy it." I didn't even open my eyes. "Po, greet the customer. More on here. More on here. Got cash, gonna die," the bird squawked. I heard a soft laugh. A woman's laugh. It was pleasant. "Your bird certainly has character." I opened my eyes. A woman in a simple white sundress was standing in front of me, smiling at Poe. She was beautiful, but not in the sharp, aggressive way Ava was. It was a classic, gentle beauty, like someone who had stepped out of an old painting. She had a faint, strange scent, not of perfume, but of fresh rain and strange, exotic herbs. My heart did a little stutter step. "Sir, I was wondering if you purchase items here?" the woman asked, turning her smile on me. Her eyes were dark and incredibly bright, like polished obsidian. It felt like she could see right through me. "Depend on the item," I said, sitting up straight. "I don't buy fakes." She smiled again and took something from her small handbag, placing it gently on the counter. It was a scale. It was the size of my palm, pitch black, and etched with intricate, glowing golden patterns. I had no idea what kind of creature it could have come from, but it was cool to the touch, its material neither metal nor stone. The moment I saw it, the bone pendant on my chest began to burn with a familiar heat. And in my mind, a flood of information appeared, unbidden. Item, the first scale. Origin, shed from the void WIRM, Jormungandr, during the last cycle. Function, serves as a key to a fracture leading to the WIRM's nest. Threat level, cataclysmic. I snapped my head up, staring at the woman in shock. How did she get this? Who was she? The woman was still smiling, as if she knew exactly what was going through my head. She tapped a delicate finger on the scale. "I found this in an old ruin," she said softly. "I have a feeling it doesn't belong in this world. I was told that the owner of this shop, Mr. Harrison, has a reputation for dealing with unusual artifacts." She looked at me, her eyes curving into crescents. "Do you recognize it?" I looked at her. She looked back at me. Our eyes met. I knew my quiet life was over. A new job had just walked in the door. I picked up the scale, feeling its impossible weight. Then I grinned. "I recognize it," I said. "But a piece like this, I can't just take it off your hands. It's going to cost you extra."